I walked out of my wife's sister's wedding reception 3 weeks ago, and I haven't been back to our house since. Lissa has sent me over 200 texts and called maybe 50 times, the last voicemail. Her crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. Something about how I can't do this to her, how she'll lose everything, how her family will never forgive her. I deleted it. I'm not interested in her panic. I'm interested in watching her understand exactly what she threw away when she decided humiliating me in front of her entire family was acceptable behavior. Let me back up, because you need to understand how we got here. Lissa and I have been married for 4 years. We met when I was 27. She was 25. I'm 31 now. When we started dating, she seemed impressed that I was working on starting my own consulting business. She told her friends I was ambitious, driven, entrepreneurial. Her parents, Lily and Francis, they seemed less enthusiastic, but they were polite enough. They own a chain of medical supply stores across 3 states. They're used to a certain lifestyle. I could tell Francis was measuring me up the first time we met, doing the math on my potential earning capacity versus what he thought his daughter deserved. The business took longer to get off the ground than I expected. That happens. I was working contracts to keep income steady while building the client base. But it meant some months were tight, and I wasn't pulling in the 6 figures Lissa had probably imagined when she said yes to my proposal. Her sister Phoebe, meanwhile, married Angus 2 years ago, and Angus works in private equity. He drives a Range Rover, and they just bought a house with one of those massive kitchen islands you see on home renovation shows. Every family dinner at Lily and Francis's place became this subtle competition, where Phoebe would mention their vacation to the Maldives or their new furniture, and Lissa would get this pinched look on her face. About a year into our marriage, Lissa started making comments, small stuff at first. She'd see me working late on a proposal and say, well, hopefully this one actually goes somewhere, or we'd be getting ready for bed. And she'd mention how Phoebe told her about Angus's latest bonus, then look at me like she was waiting for me to apologize for not being him. I tried talking to her about it. I told her that business was growing, that these things take time, that I was doing everything I could. She'd say she understood, but her tone made it clear she didn't. The comments got worse. 6 months ago, we were at a family barbecue at her parents' house, and Francis asked me how the business was going. I was explaining that I'd landed a major client and was hiring a part-time assistant, when Lissa cut in and said, he's been saying that for 3 years now, Dad. Maybe we should just be realistic about what this is. Everyone got quiet. I just stood there, holding my beer, while Francis changed the subject, and Lissa walked inside to help her mother with dessert. I didn't bring it up later because what was the point? She'd already made her feelings clear, in front of her family. Then came Phoebe's second wedding. Yeah, second. She and Angus did a courthouse thing 2 years ago, but apparently that wasn't good enough. So they planned this massive formal wedding at a country club, 200 guests, a band, the whole production. Lissa was maid of honor. She'd been stressed about it for months, getting her dress altered 3 times, arguing with Phoebe about the bridesmaid's schedule, spending hours on the phone discussing flower arrangements like it was a military operation. I mostly stayed out of it. I had my own stress, dealing with a client who was threatening to back out of a contract, which would have meant losing 30% of my quarterly revenue. The day of the wedding was a Saturday in October. Beautiful. Weather, everything, picture perfect. The ceremony was fine. I sat with Lissa's extended family, made small talk with her aunt about her new grandkid. The reception started at 6. Cocktail hour in this massive ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a golf course. I was standing by the bar when Lissa came up to me. She'd been taking photos with the wedding party. She got close, smiled like we were having a nice moment, and then she said, "Do not humiliate me tonight with your worthless existence. No one wants to hear about your failed dreams. Just stand there and look decent." I looked at her. She was still smiling. To anyone watching, we probably looked like a happy couple having a sweet exchange. She touched my arm and walked away to join Phoebe for more photos. I stood there for a minute, processing what had just happened. Then I ordered a whiskey and went to find our table. Dinner was the standard wedding reception thing, salmon or chicken, speeches from the best man and maid of honor, Lissa glowing in her emerald dress while she toasted her sister. Talking about true love and partnership, I ate my food and didn't say much. The people at our table were mostly Angus's work friends. They spent most of dinner talking about the stock market and interest rates. I wasn't in the mood to participate. After dinner, the DJ started playing music. But before the dancing really got going, Phoebe's father-in-law grabbed the microphone and suggested everyone go around and share their achievements from the past year. This wasn't planned. You could tell by the way the wedding coordinator looked annoyed, but Francis loved the idea and started clapping. So we did this whole thing where people stood up and talked about their promotions, new babies, home purchases. Angus talked about his firm making him junior. Partner Lissa's cousin talked about finishing her residency. Francis stood up and announced that their company had just opened their 15th location. Then it came around to our table. One of Angus's friends talked about closing a major deal. His wife talked about their daughter getting into a private school. Then everyone was looking at me. I could have said something about the client I just landed, or the project I was working on, but before I could even decide if I wanted to participate, Lissa laughed and said, "Michael." She paused. For effect. He's still convinced he'll make it big someday. It's cute, like watching a hamster on a wheel. People laughed. Not everyone, but enough. The kind of laughter that's uncomfortable, but also amused, because someone just said something outrageous, and everyone's had a few drinks. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. She was smiling at me, this satisfied smile, like she just won something. Angus's friend next to me patted my shoulder and said something about entrepreneurship, being tough. And then the attention moved on to the next table. The dancing started after that. I went outside to the terrace. Needed air. I needed to not be in that room. I stood out there for maybe 20 minutes, watching people through the windows. Lissa was dancing with Phoebe and her bridesmaids, laughing, spinning around. She looked happy. She looked like someone who hadn't just spent the evening treating her husband like he was an embarrassment. She had to manage. I went back inside for the toasts. Phoebe and Angus were standing at the front of the room with champagne glasses. The best man had already gone. Lissa stood up as maid of honor. She talked about growing up with Phoebe, about knowing Angus was the right person, because he matched Phoebe's ambition and drive. She talked about partnership, meaning supporting each other's success. Then she looked directly at me and said, "At least you didn't marry a loser who lives in Fantasyland." More laughter. Phoebe looked uncomfortable for a second. But then Lissa raised her glass, and everyone drank, and the moment passed. I walked over to where Lissa was standing. She was accepting hugs from relatives, basking in the attention. I stood next to her, until she noticed me. She turned, and I said very quietly, so only she could hear, "You'll remember this night." Then I walked out. I drove to a hotel. I had my wallet, my phone, and the clothes I was wearing. I texted my brother to let him know I was fine and where I was. Then I turned off my phone. I slept for maybe 3 hours, the whole time. I kept seeing her face when she made those comments, the satisfaction in her expression, the way she'd looked at me, like I was something she needed to dispose of, in front of witnesses. Sunday morning, I turned my phone back on. 43 texts from Lissa. The first few were angry, asking where I went, telling me I was being dramatic and embarrassing. Then they shifted to confused, then worried. By text 30, she was apologizing, saying she'd had too much to drink, saying she didn't mean it the way it sounded. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made one phone call. It took about 15 minutes. I was calm during the entire conversation. I explained what I needed, and the person on the other end confirmed they could handle it immediately. I thanked them and hung up. Then I blocked Lissa's number and checked into an extended stay hotel for the month. By Monday afternoon, my phone was blowing up with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Lily called. Francis called. Phoebe called 3 times. I didn't answer any of them. I did check the voicemails, though. Lily was asking me to call her, saying Lissa was very upset and they needed to talk through whatever happened at the wedding. Francis's message was shorter, just asking me to be reasonable and handle this like an adult. Phoebe's messages got progressively more frantic, saying Lissa had been crying all day and wouldn't tell anyone what was going on. The texts from unknown numbers started coming through Tuesday morning. I'm guessing Lissa was using her friends' and family members' phones, since I'd blocked her. The messages said I was being cruel, that I needed to come home so we could talk, that whatever I was planning wasn't going to solve anything. One text said, "Michael, please. I can't lose everything. We need to figure this out before it's too late. I haven't responded to any of it. I've been staying at the extended stay, working remotely, keeping my routine normal." The client I was worried about signed a 2-year contract extension last week, which means my income is secure through next year at minimum. I've been meeting with some people, having some conversations, making sure everything I need to do gets done properly and legally. The voicemails are getting more desperate. Yesterday, Lissa left one where she was sobbing so hard I couldn't understand most of it. But I caught enough. Something about her parents. Something about the house. Something about how could I do this. I deleted it halfway through. Here's what I need you to understand. I'm not being impulsive. I'm not reacting out of anger from one bad night. This has been building for years. Every dismissive comment. Every time she made me feel like I wasn't enough. Every family gathering where she positioned me as her disappointing choice, while her sister paraded around with successful Angus. I've been thinking about what I would do if it came to this, for longer than I'd like to admit, when she said those things at the wedding, in front of everyone, with that smile on her face. She made the choice for me. The phone call I made wasn't complicated. I just activated something I'd been preparing for the last 8 months, because I knew, somewhere in the back of my mind, that eventually, Lissa was going to push me too far, and I was going to need leverage. I'm not going to explain exactly what I did yet, because honestly, I'm still watching it play out, and I need to see how certain people react. Before I make my next moves, what I will say is this. The house we live in is mine. I inherited it from my grandfather. Lissa has no legal claim to it. Everything else, all the joint accounts, all the shared assets. I've been very careful about maintaining clear records of what's mine versus what's ours. I've been ready for this conversation for months. Lissa doesn't know that yet. She's still operating under the assumption that this is about the wedding, that if she apologizes enough, or explains enough, or cries enough, I'll come back, and we'll move past it. She hasn't figured out that I've been done for a long time, and the wedding was just the final confirmation that she doesn't respect me, and never really did. I'll update if anything significant happens. But right now, I'm just letting her sit with her panic, while I handle what needs to be handled. She wanted to treat me like I was nothing, in front of her family. Now she gets to explain to them why her husband isn't coming home